Hello again, this is Max from Spaceship Villain. As you might be able to tell, I've relocated, now living in Orange County, and as a result of that, I've found myself somewhat immersed in Disney parks and pop culture. I've decided to make this retrospective review in keeping with that theme, so today we're going to be taking a look at Magical Quest starring Mickey Mouse for the Super Nintendo. Released in 1992, Magical Quest starring Mickey Mouse was a platform game developed by Capcom. I remember renting this game from the local Movie Madness shop when I was young. I was already probably older than the target demographic for this title, but I've always had a soft spot for this character. Mickey Mouse was an integral part of my childhood, assembled mostly from endless rewatches of the VHS tapes my family recorded in our free preview weeks of the newly founded Disney Channel. I don't think a lot of the elements of this game were taken directly from the cartoons, in contrast with later games like Mickey Mania, in which every level was a direct adaptation of an animated feature. Magical Quest feels more like a one-off or a side story in that sense. You have the basic characters of Mickey, Donald, and Goofy, but there's no sense of continuity with the cartoons of that era. Instead, you get a fairly boilerplate story. Following a quick cutscene of the main characters playing catch, you find out Pluto has been kidnapped by the evil Emperor Pete. A kindly wizard shows up to explain your task and start you off on your journey. The cutscenes are very basic, using in-game sprites instead of custom animations, but communicate the story well enough for what it is. Now, I later end up contradicting most of this, but my very first initial thoughts on replaying this game were that it seemed to be taking inspiration from Mario Bros. 2. This was based on the way you pick up blocks or enemies and throw them to defeat other enemies. It turns out that these early guys just take 2 hops to defeat, but it first appeared that you could only stun them and needed to throw something to knock them out entirely. Like I said, I turned out to be wrong about this, but that was my initial read of the gameplay at first glance, for what it's worth. Despite that, the actual gameplay is pretty intuitive. You run and jump and hop on enemies, and can pick up the gold blocks throughout each level for coins. One way or another, this is Capcom's take on a Mario game. It twists the formula a bit once it starts to introduce its own power-ups. Special abilities in Magical Quest take the form of special costumes Mickey can wear, which include the magic turban, firefighter suit, and mountaineer outfits. Switching between these costumes is accompanied by an animation of Mickey drawing a curtain behind which he changes clothes. Though you'll see it a lot over the course of this game, the curtain animation is undeniably adorable. There's just no other word for it. The costumes are all useful in their own ways, which I'll talk more about later. Visually, I like that the mountaineering costume bears particular resemblance to a more contemporary Mickey used to promote the Matterhorn bobsled ride, and the magic turban, with the magic lamp to refill it, might remind the player of elements of Disney's feature film Aladdin, which was released that same year. There are a couple definite issues with the underlying platforming, though. The characters are fairly blocky, but the collision detection still feels off in some spots. In one encounter, an underwater enemy was still chasing me as I emerged on land, and glitched itself far off into the sky in its pursuit. Later in the game, you'll run into a fundamental problem in the ice level. Walking control on ice is very slippery, even on non-snow covered blocks, and a total break with platformer conventions. Controls while running on the tomato or hanging onto the sled were so precarious, and I died so often as to discourage exploration. I'm sure I probably missed a hidden shop or heart container as a result of the controls in those sections and just hurrying to get them over with. The frequent treasure boxes filled with fruit instead of coins or hearts point to an older game design style that still put emphasis on points and high score. Coming at it today, I don't so much care about what my score is, but I know I sure could have used some more coins to buy magic upgrades. The hidden shops, and they're all hidden, by the way, allow you to buy upgrades for your costumes or an extra heart container, but everything is so expensive that it's rare to actually find a shop and have the funds to make use of it at the same time. And once I got to a shop eager to buy a new heart container, only to find that they were now sold out, even though I had never bought one. Maybe this was because I had found enough of them hidden in the levels and reached the maximum amount already? Or maybe this shop inexplicably doesn't sell them, but it was never made clear. Minor gameplay problems aside, where this game really shines is in its visuals. Even the level title screens use a very Disney font. The D in Dark Forest, for example, should be easily recognizable even to casual fans. It's a minor point, but I loved the persistence of costume. Whatever you're wearing at the end of a stage will be visible on the world map through the next stage's intro. The art style is a little inconsistent, but when it's in full effect, it really does capture the old Disney magic. Character animation is the highlight here, with trademark squash and stretch exhibited on jumping and landing. Each of Mickey's power-up outfits is well drawn, with a lot of frames of animation. With all the attention to detail that was clearly being paid here, the only thing that feels a bit flat to me is the surprisingly static foreground elements. I was surprised not to see basic animations like swaying grass, leaves blowing in the wind, etc. It's not really a complaint, since a lot of games from this time didn't feature that sort of ambient animation. It just feels like an omission here, with the rest of this world as detailed as it is. On the other hand, the backgrounds are nicely detailed with a few layers of parallax, and really enhance the theme of each level. You can practically feel the chill under the aurora of the ice level, and the peat trees in the background of the forest level add an appropriate amount of menace. In fact, the character of Pete is used as a recurring pattern in a lot of the enemies and environments you'll come across. Aside from the basic entrances and exits of every level, and other direct icons of the villain, it seems like every boss and mini-boss you fight has been somehow possessed by a Pete-like spirit. Many of the minor enemies even feature his recognizable chin or other similar physical traits, and this design motif helps the cohesion of a lot of different elements. Enemies are, for the majority, the bugs and birds and other cartoon wildlife you would expect to find in these levels, as well as some more outlandish flame sprites, which still manage to fit right in. You tend to fight more and more generic Pete soldiers as you go on, but enemy design is strong, especially in the early portion of the game. Your foes strike that perfect balance of cute and menacing. These bees clearly want to injure you, but they're still pretty adorable. The same for this beaver, this bird, and even these starfish. This is a children's game for sure, but even as an adult I was struck by how simply charming everything is, and I really like that about this game. Now that I'm older, the remixed dystopian style of Kingdom Hearts or Epic Mickey really appeals to me, but this game reflects the more fundamental Disney afternoon I grew up with. I mean, the 1-up icon is a little stuffed Mickey just like the one I had when I first played. How cute is that? Music and sound effects are good for the most part. Some areas like swimming through tree sap sound just right, while others like the wind whistling through mountain chasms are too punctuated by the surrounding silence to be convincing. Music is better in the spooky areas of the game, like the woods and the castle. The fire level sounds a bit too much like Norfair from Super Metroid, which kind of oversells the hellscape for a Disney game. The level of difficulty is appropriate for a tough children's game, though. There is an easy mode I probably played when I was younger, and I remember I was able to beat it at the time. Even today, I was able to push through the game comfortably on normal, so I'm assuming that's proportionate. I actually died a lot of times to various enemies. It probably would have been worse if I didn't still have the secret heart container locations memorized from poring over Nintendo Power maps. And there are definitely some tricky platforming sections, but a lot of the difficulty is due to a substantial knockback and stun period after you get hit, causing you to fall off and then stay standing on a spike pit or environmental hazard. The climbing gear is also a bit finicky to control, and I ended up climbing beyond the range of moving platforms on some of the longer gaps. The first time I actually had to restart was a block barrier on the descending platform at the beginning of level 2. The placement of the blocks is hard to work through before the ceiling comes down, in addition to the flying enemies coming at you, and I died several times on this obstacle. The mini-bosses and boss fights all follow a pattern you can learn and exploit, in keeping with Capcom side-scrollers. Bosses have an intuitive health bar of sorts, either in changing colors or the segments of this snake boss. The only one that took a couple of tries was the walrus at the end of the ice level. I would run out of magic or water halfway through and then have to jump on his head a few times to finish him. I don't know if it's the height of the character or the rapid transition from arc to platform or what, but I could never get the hang of it. But all this difficulty is alleviated almost entirely by a very forgiving continue system. Not only is it unlimited, but it also restarts you on the same level in which you died. For example, I died on the walrus boss fight in level 5-3, and most games would let you continue from level 5-1. Magical Quest lets you continue directly on 5-3, which is generous to a fault. The continue system ensured I was never overly frustrated to have to try again. Maybe it works differently on a higher difficulty, but on my playthrough the whole live system seemed almost redundant. One nice thing is that whenever a new power-up is introduced, the game typically provides a safe space to try it out and get the feel for it before you move on to face any enemies with it. The costumes are designed well in that they add functionality that can be applied beyond their initial appearance. The firefighter suit is obviously going to be useful in the fire level where you first receive it, but you'll also find yourself switching back to it later in the game to freeze platforms in the ice level, or to move the gray blocks in some rudimentary puzzle layouts. The same goes for the climbing gear, which can be used to climb the special grappling spots or to remove the shield from an armored enemy. The magic turban got first billing on the cover art, and proves itself worthy with a ranged attack used in every level of the game, and even underwater. Even the basic, uncostumed Mickey has abilities like pulling chains and spinning blocks, which you will find useful in the later levels. Each new ability was prevented from being a gimmick. The variety of abilities is well balanced, and it's consistently satisfying to come up to a situation where you know exactly which costume you need to get the job done. I'm going to be wrapping it up now, so spoiler alert from here on out, just so you know. The wizard is never seen again at the end of the story, which feels like a bit of a missed opportunity. The ending actually came back around to my initial Mario Bros. 2 comparison by concluding that the whole adventure was only a dream. This is an accepted or established cliché, but it also feels kind of like a cop-out, a way of saying none of this really mattered the way a cartoon might have. When Mickey, Donald, and Goofy go from being clock cleaners in one cartoon to ghost hunters in the next, nobody questions it, and there is no larger story arc to explain this change. I guess this is one way video games are, or were, still perceived as a fundamentally different experience to necessitate this postscript. Overall, this game was a bit harder than I expected, but well-paced and definitely worth the trouble. The art is rich and dense as to be expected from Disney, and the platforming is rewarding as to be expected from Capcom. I probably could have done without the ice level, but all in all, I would definitely recommend this game. If you like Disney and Mickey and Pals in particular, if you like the Super Nintendo era and are looking for games you might have missed, if you like Capcom classic side-scrollers or any combination of these, go back and check this game out. And let me know what you think. I know there were 2 sequels to this game, but I never played them because I wasn't aware of them at the time, and I think only one of them might have even made it to North America. I might go back and try those out now, or I might move on to Epic Mickey 2. But either way, I'm glad you have gone back and relived the experience of Magical Quest starring Mickey Mouse.